It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 experience. Let's hit the road.
Welcome, villains. This week we've got a well-known guest for sure, somebody who produces content like nobody else I've ever seen. Will Cook, trucking researcher, advocate, author, trucker. His Facebook page, A Driver's Perspective, has tons of great content. I share a bunch of it on our Facebook page on a regular basis too. Will, nice to meet you, and thanks for joining the show.
Yep. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, I wanted to say kind of hats off to you and all that you do. You know, the amount of work that you do, the thought that you put into it, and you're sharing it with all of us. You know, honestly, it's a breathtaking volume. How do you do it?
Honestly, I just read. I don't watch a whole lot of TV. I do a lot of trucking, so on my off time, I'm just constantly listening and watching what's going on. And I'll take my idea, my personal, chat, I let chat edit and kind of inspire me or give me different thoughts, right, on how to word things. And it helps out a lot. I used to have, she's an assistant at Ball State in Indiana there, and she used to do a lot of my editing and so forth like that. And then she was like, between her and my kids, they were like, you need to start using chat. Use chat, write down what you want to say and put it in chat, and then and it still worked. And I thought, oh, this is gonna be like real easy, right? And if you've ever used chat, you'll realize it takes work with chat too. It just takes the editor out of it. So that's really what it is. Just really passionate about what I do, and it's just driven. This is what I love, and I just think there needs to be a voice out here for the driver. And it's just a season that I'm going through right now as far as all the trucking stuff. I hope to get back into doing ministry work and putting boots on the ground to do some ministry work.
Yeah, for sure. What I was going to ask you, I usually get started, because to me, part of the fun of the podcast and the Channel 19 is experiences, sharing a little bit about the backstory, like how you got into trucking, like what led you to be in this crazy clan that's called a trucker.
As a young guy, I'm 58 years old. I remember my grandfather getting me a little Honda 50 mini bike back in the day. He cut me a path through the apple field back there and even put a stop sign up. I've just always loved traveling, driving, that kind of thing. And then as I got older, it was time to go to college or go in the military or do something. And if you think about it, back in the 80s and stuff, trucking was still pretty cool. And I grew up under the days of Convoy, Smokey and the Bandit and all that. So it was, it just it fit for me for what I enjoyed doing. And I went into the National Guards as a 88 Mike truck driver, Indiana National Guards. There wasn't nothing going on at the time. So that's why I went Guards, and I come out and started driving a truck coast to coast until I had my first child. And then I went regional, local while the kids were growing up, and then went back over the road. And because I love trucking, I truly dig trucks and trailers and stuff. I've been able to haul cattle. I've did super loads and pulled a double drop stretch. I think the only thing I haven't done, and I did it a couple times, was a tanker. And then I also got to drive the fire truck, the water fire truck. So that was kind of unique. So I've got to experience a lot of driving different equipment over the last, it'll be 35 years, I think, this October. So I just like trucking.
Nice. Yeah. And, I read it in your bio online. Don't be bashful. Like, you've got some incredible achievements as a truck driver that are nothing to sneeze at.
I give that a lot of that's thank you, Jesus. We say luck a lot, but it's really it's a hedge protection around you. But I give the skills, I think, to I don't think I know. It was the National Guards. You have 8 weeks of AIT, right? So I was training because it was truck driver. I drove the Hemmets, tractor trailers, so forth like that. And then when I came out at that point in time, they didn't recognize military training. So the trucking schools were pretty fresh at that time. And I went to Granite City, Illinois to Amtech truck driving school. So I went through another schooling pretty close right after, right? And what was that? I think that was an 8-week, close 4 to 4 weeks. And then I rode with a trainer. The guy's name was David Dupree out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Man, that's crazy. We ran coast to coast in an 89 cab over double wide cab Peterbilt for Coretta out of Paramus, New Jersey. I drove out of the Chicago Heights terminal. So yes, I did. I ended up getting when my girls were born, I got 2 girls 13 months apart. I wanted to come off the road, and I got a local job. I applied with them twice. I hauled cattle before then, and I had speeding tickets, all that kind of stuff. And I remember Syndicate going to them, a hometown company there, private fleet in the floral industry. They're like, too many points on your license. We can't, speeding tickets. So, but I went back again. I seen that they were hiring. They had a sign out, and I went back to them a couple years later, and they put me on, and they hired me on. I got my record cleaned up enough and drove for them for 11 and a half years. They were a member of the American Trucking Association. And I volunteered in my community during that time. I'd run out to the West Coast and back. I'd get like 3 or 4 days off every other week. So I was able to volunteer in my community. So I volunteered at the fire department. I ended up giving my life to the Lord and volunteered in the community at the rescue mission, the men's shelter, doing things like that. And I worked some pretty big scenes and ended up with my 1,000,000-mile safe driving award. And at the same time, I was there 10 years and plus my community service. And the company, I ended up being a mentor for the elementary school for Syndicate Sales and did a thing with the mayor and all that kind of stuff for the youth. And I got nominated for that Master Driving Award for that. And it was just like, I'm a knucklehead. It's a God's thing. It really is. I'm just saying it's a God thing. I wrote Salvation, Escape from the Darkness, and these guys are like saying, I'm like, listen, it wasn't me. It was the good Lord. It was the Holy Spirit in me that drove me to do that. But I think a lot of it has to do with the training. I know. A lot of it had to do with the training. By doing AIT and then coming out and going through truck driving school. And the truck driving school wasn't just a 3-week course back then. And then having to go with a trainer for a period of time. I had plenty of training, and that's why I fight for training. Still to this day, I say training, training, training. Even with the visa drivers and non-domicile drivers and all that, if you put strict enforcement on training, no matter if you take all the political stuff out of non-English, this or that, if you enforce this training, the accidents would stop. Okay, because people would be trained. So I give the credit to the training. And then on top of it, it wasn't just the training. It was something that I wanted to do. Charlie Kirk said it. I've watched hours of his videos in the last 48 hours. And, one of the students says, so how do you find your purpose? And he says, you find yourself what you're skilled at, where you have a gift at. And with that gift, if you have passion, because you may have multiple gifts, but find the gift that you have passion for. And when those intercede, there's going to be your purpose. And that's what's kind of happened right here, I believe, with me in the last 3 years with a driver's perspective and what I'm doing right now with the ministry. The ministry will be launched. It's kind of launched. I just have it on the back because we haven't put boots on the ground. We're still kind of building. And I've seen it's just where I'm really comfortable, and it's what I know and what I do. And it was like, it wasn't even as much trucking now as what it is my love for humanity, for the driver, for the people, because there's a lot of people out here that they don't really strive to have $1 million home or ride around in a limousine or anything like that. They just want to have a home, be able to go on vacation, have food, clothes for their children, so forth like that. And that's what built America. If that, that's what it is. Yep. Get me on a soap opera here.
Well, you touched on this, so let me circle back to it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, or about a week ago, I think it was last Saturday, you wrote a piece called Disagree Like an Adult. And I used that piece in my episode 28, and I talked about it, and because knowing that I was embarking on this driver shortage, air quotes, series, that we're going to talk about some some sacred cows, some contentious areas, some things that I think will make people uncomfortable, and not doing it, and I was trying to make sure, and I told the audience, hold me to Will's standards here, because I think it was very well written and well thought out about, how do we talk about serious things that are gonna touch some nerves and still stay productive about it. And then days after you wrote that, and you mentioned Charlie Kirk was killed. And while literally doing exactly that, right? Going out on the front line and having a conversation that makes people uncomfortable. And I wanted to get your thoughts. You mentioned it, and I kind of had it queued up anyway to ask you about it, because I mean, obviously the timing of what you said, and then the horrific, Charlie being killed. I mean, it's hard to ignore, right? Or just the reality, or the timing of it.
It hurts me just to think because of that. I mean, it gets me right now because it's such a deep of where I'm at in my life, right? Because I am a follower of Jesus Christ. I just don't believe any of my following. I fall short every day. And if you're a true follower, believer, you have the Holy Spirit in it, you love people. Okay.
Hmm.
And Charlie was a great example of that. And that's why it gets me, was because if you watch his debates, he was in the flesh too. You could see him get aggravated every now and then, but he kept control of it. And he would, I believe, revert back to his belief in Christ, how Christ loved those who sinned. He still loved them. And even those that attacked Charlie, it's just like they said, you know, Charlie wouldn't want us rebelling. But to go back to what you're saying is to argue like adults, he is a great example of that because he didn't call them names. He didn't belittle them unless they were just, and he still did it in a very respectful way. If somebody would want to say that he did, but it was a lash out of a more of a correction of, it's like a defense more than a offense when he did do it. It was because it's like, if I don't say something here, this guy's just going to constantly just overpower. And the Lord said, come boldly, speak his word boldly. So it wasn't really that he was so to go back to what you're saying, adults, that's what you're seeing a lot in the circle in trucking. Trucking is a rough crowd. You've been in it for years. You know what I'm saying? As far
Yeah.
as we have some rough people, drivers. I'm rough around the edges. In the personal attacks, we should be able to talk about anything, especially when it comes to trucking issues, and be able to disagree without attacking the person. Even as much as I talk about Chris Spears or the ATA and the corporates, I give them credit when you talk to me. They are educated men, where their IQ is, whatever, I don't know. But, I truly believe that they stay up and they try to succeed in what they're doing. Whether I don't agree with it, okay, but they're trying to be the best at what they're doing, or whether it's saving money or doing whatever. I'm not going to degrade them like that. But I will say, as I keep going here, I'm saying like this, some of the stuff's evil. You need to correct it. It's just evil. You're stepping on the very people that built your wealth, that allowed you to have the wealth that you have. And that is your veterans, your laborers, so forth like that. Without them, we would have never have got to where we're at today. Okay. So, and to go back to what you were saying about debate, it's the love for people is basically what it is I just have a love for people all around, period. So, but they get under my skin too.
Yeah, for sure.
I
Yeah,
slip,
and
I
you're on
slip up.
social media, so like that's
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
as can be a
I,
stranger environment.
every now and then I post something. I'm like, and it's like the angel sitting over on my shoulder. You gonna leave that up there? You really gonna leave that up there? I told
Yeah,
you not to do it in the first place. It's like, yes,
yeah.
sir. Yep. So,
Well, let
and
me.
that's the other thing too, is I understand these people. If they don't have the same moral compass, then they're not going to see things the way you see. And we're all, a variety is the spice of life, and we all, our perspective, a driver's perspective, but a perspective, where does that come from? That comes from your life. your life experiences. You're going to see things differently because you live differently, and I just
Yeah.
happen to have that understanding. When you're not attacking me, I'm human. If you attack me personally, my flesh kind of jumps in front of everything, right? Not necessarily my common sense understanding. You poke me in the nose, I want to poke you in the nose back. Right? So, but I do understand when everything calms down. I raised 7 children, and out of 7 children, like I said, I was telling you earlier, they weren't all mine, but they all have rights to the refrigerator, so I claim them. That's 7 different personalities, and they're living 7 different lives right now, and that really taught me love too, because their moral compasses, they're all pretty good kids. Okay, I love them to death. They're great. They're doing good, but they're all a little different, and I've had to learn. I get in trouble for it, right? You bring them all together and say, "What do you think about your dad?" And you're going to get 7 different feedbacks. But
Yeah.
and I don't mention them on social media. Very, very seldom do I, because I'm very controversial. I'm very set in my beliefs, and doing this is just like politics. I'm sure you understand this yourself. I do have my haters, and I don't want to drag my children into something like that. So I leave. That's why you don't see me post too much about my children and so forth.
Yeah. You made me think of something, it being a father and a stepfather, it's it there's a certain part of like I had to get old to learn what it was really like being young,
Mm,
and especially like on that perspective topic you were mentioning, right? Where like, when you're young, you're experiencing the world for the first time in many ways, and you're experiencing it without a lot of context about the fact that other people are having different experiences. But one of the things that kind of
mhm.
opens your eyes is just realizing like how different your child's experience is to your own, and all kinds of frameworks, whether that's the technology that they're, become accustomed to, where, generations before us, thought, running water in a flush toilet was an advancement, and for now, like our kids looking at us going like, what, you had to like rewind a tape when you were done with it or get charged $1 at the VHS store? Like what?
Yeah, yeah,
And so and there's just certain reference points that, like I catch myself all the time, like quoting something or referencing something, or I reference Blockbuster, and then like, what the hell is a Blockbuster? You know, and you just really, it teaches you something about perspective, kind of along the point you were making.
yep. We see that a lot in trucking right now, on the fact of the newer generation coming into trucking. And again, the mega carriers, the big corporations and carriers, have taken advantage of that. And I watched it happen, and I kind of got my crawl back in the day when they were doing it too. You seen them start positioning for these ELDs. You seen them start taking more and more freedom out of trucking and more control into trucking. The one thing that I haven't studied and got into, and this is like the second time I think I've said it and it's came across, so maybe I really need to dig into it deep, is insurance. The insurance companies probably had a lot to do with it. But then you go to the flip coin of that, and most of your mega carriers, your top 10, I'll just always go back to the top 10 at the ATA, which would be UPS, FedEx, Warner, Old Dominion, those type of companies. They can 80% insure themselves. 80%. They have to have 20% of another outside insurance company. So that's why they can do this churn, this mill in turning drivers out, right? Turn them into students. They get paid government money, they get grants, whatever, they get credit, whatever it is they do, and they churn them out. Well, if one of those guys get in an accident, or it's little fender benders, this or that, and then they can take new drivers and train them, because the insurance, like when I was with Kevin, his insurance, he couldn't get any insurance feasible that without a driver having at least 2 years experience.
Right.
So that's something that, like I said, this is the second time I really want to dig into. I know what I know. I just need to be able to pull the facts and connect all the dots to it. But these carriers, I remember back when lease purchase just started coming. Benz was one of them, had these beautiful red W900s, and they were refrigerated outfit, and he would give away a Harley once a year. And, you know, that's when the trend started kind of happening. I remember that happening. And it's just, but you had to have a decent record, and they just didn't put anybody in those trucks back then, right? And now look where we're at today. Like you said, how everything's changed. The people coming into, the other thing was automotive industry. Let me back out. There's a lot I can say, so maybe a little scattered. Let's go back to when automotive industry, they started sending our jobs to Mexico and stuff like that. A lot of them guys came out into trucking, which fed into the mega carriers design, because these guys came out, they took a buyout of $30,000-$40,000. And you know as well as I do now, that doesn't last, right, very long. And so they came into trucking. Well, they're used to punching a time clock. They're used to taking a break, a half-hour break. They're used to having their 15-minute break. They came out, and I would say this back then, I was hauling automotives when this happened because my kids were young and automotives got me home. I would get mad. I was like, you guys are jacking this company up. You're jacking this industry up because you're spoiled. We don't operate like that. I want to go home. I don't want to be out here on the road taking a 10-hour break. You know, if I sleep 5 hours, set my alarm for 3 or 5, I know what I can do. I haven't been in an accident, but these guys wanted everything to work like it did in the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it wasn't just automotive that done that. There was other factories that got shipped over, and these guys started coming into trucking. And then that's when they shifted, and that's when everything started shifting in trucking around that. And if you look at it today, that's where it's at. It's in that sense now. And it changed big time, because these guys no longer, during that era of time, they didn't want to own a truck. They didn't care about a long hood Peterbilt or the lights, the chrome. Like I said, how I wanted to drive trucks. I thought trucks were cool. Never really wanted to be a mechanic. I wanted to know the mechanics of it. I didn't mind being able to work on something myself, but as far as being a mechanic, I never really had that desire, right? I just wanted to drive these cool things and tear them up, let somebody else fix them, right? And I'd go out, I had just as much enjoyment polishing wheels and chrome and stuff like that as I did turning a wrench. Anyways, so you've seen that mentality change, it because it went from people actually wanting to drive a truck for a living. And even in the old days during Hop, and then when them guys would run them local runs and stuff, if you think about their roads and how they traveled back then, it was a journey back then. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because it wasn't like there was a lot of 2-lane. There wasn't the interstates. They didn't have phones and this and that. So it was a journey. It was an adventure, even for the local guys.
Yeah, even if the miles were smaller, it was, it was an adventure and a journey.
Yes, and that's what drove the man inside to want to do something like that. And then when all this NAFTA stuff happened, and all these guys started coming out of the factory and coming in, it turned from a livelihood, a way of life, to a job. Not saying, I'm not putting everybody in a box, so don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not putting a blanket statement over everybody. Even back during Hoffa days, some people did it just for the money, I'm sure, right? But it was a different mindset in trucking. We had a sense of pride. It was a livelihood. We were thanked for what we did. You accomplished something. I mean, I remember the days where we had pay phones and we were still running the Atlases, and I would stop and I'd call a fire department going into one of these inner cities like Bronx. Like Coretta was out of Paramus, New Jersey, their biggest hub, their headquarters. And so I would do a lot of inner cities, and then they would run a lot to Gardena, California, right out of LA. Well, you don't go into those cities unless you know where you're going. That was ugly, low bridges, all this and all that. So, I would call a fire department. I have called a cab company and paid a cabbie to come meet me where I was at and take me to where I was going. So I am just fortunate that I lived during that time of transition, right there at that transition where we went from chauffeur to CDL. We went from logbook to ELD. You get what I'm saying? We went from, you would pull in a truck stop at night and all the trucks were sitting there with their parking lights on because we all idled the trucks. We didn't have APU units or anything like that, and you know what? I'm starting to see that come back though. I'm starting to see a lot more trucks parked now with running their lights and stuff, which they could still be, I guess, running an APU unit and just leaving their parking lights on. But yep.
Yeah, it's had its transitions, right? I kind of caught the tail end of that when I started driving, but I grew up in trucking right in the 80s and so, you know, you're right. It was definitely it was a different culture leading into that mid 90s, and even I think there's been another shift in the last, decade or so as well. I mean, some of it's scale, right? Like, the amount of I mean, a lot of us in, let's say, the 80s and 90s, we got into trucking partially as an escape from a small town somewhere, partially as an adventure, and it was kind of a different mindset. But I mean, that also wasn't scalable. And then when you look at what happened, the destruction of small town America, the shrinking small towns, the shrinking, family farms and, more corporate farms, like it kind of squeezed it. First of all, you had a growing industry that needed to scale as the size of the country grew and the need for logistics. And let's face it, we weren't eating, avocados from Colombia in the 80s and 90s either, right? Or quinoa or
Yeah,
whatever the hell else they cooked up, right? These days to bring stuff from all over the world to us. It was regional, in the summertime you ate sweet corn and watermelon because that's what was in season, you know.
yep,
And in December you
that's right.
didn't eat watermelon and sweet corn because there wasn't any nearby. And you weren't going to get it
Right,
from a boat off some far-flung land. So, the need for logistics was growing, or truck drivers, and also the pool that was the historical draw was shrinking through different reasons, right? And so you ended up like, okay, how do we solve this? Well, okay, where's what industry is shrinking, and can we convert those people into truck drivers?
right. I think that right now is an awesome time if and this is crazy to even say, I know,
You don't hear
but
that. The start of many sentences start that way.
the 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 safety and the luxury in trucking today over the road is awesome. It's the best it's ever been. And now they're going to push driverless and push unexperienced, untrained drivers into it. And it's just so mind boggling to me. It's like, what are you doing? What in the flip are you doing at the time of, and a lot of these guys don't know no different because they didn't
Hmm.
truck back in the days that I did, right? Where we
Yeah.
were. But you've got APU units, you can cook in your truck, you've got grocery stores that you're constantly at, you've got all the safety features on a truck, and the safety features are kind of ridiculous. Just be truthful. It's these engineers, it's like, you're silly. You're silly.
Yeah.
But it makes sense why they did it because of who lobbies for that stuff and who the manufacturers sat down at the table to talk to. They wanted to be able to go overseas, get people that don't have experience, that don't understand this, and all these safety features that they've added to these trucks is to help train them. You get so they could lower their training standards. How'd that work for you guys? How'd that work?
Right.
So, anyways, but as far as the luxuries in these trucks, you can FaceTime your family. You can't
Yeah,
beat
we're doing a
the.
podcast. You're in,
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a great time to be running over the road and so forth. If that's your style, or if you can do it, it's just, yeah, greed and power, just jacking things up. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, I guess.
so they say.
That's what they say. Yep,
Well,
but
let's
I
switch
love it.
gears for a
These guys,
second. I want to ask you
the,
a different question
yep,
because, and it's interesting, of course, I started in the 90s. You're, kind of one part of a generation ahead of me as far as you're starting and what you experienced. One group that's been around through all of that really has been OOIDA. And, I've been a member off and on throughout my career. And you talk about them and some of the things that they do. And I just wanted you to talk because, at times, and even I probably all the time, just like anybody who's going to be out there, there's the people who are, the whole spectrum is covered. The people who are madly in love with an organization, the people who absolutely despise an organization, and a whole bunch of people somewhere in between. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the people who are, let's say, not positively thinking about OOIDA, and then also your experience with that group and your thoughts.
It's with me, I didn't even get into advocacy until 2018 after my divorce. Okay. And that's how come I don't blame these other people when some of the driver advocates come out. Well, nobody pays attention, blah, blah, blah. I understand that because all I wanted to do was come out, get my job done, go home, be home with my family and enjoy what I worked for. I get it. So, but you have to go to them. And you have to, when you go to them, you can't just go and just throw a bunch of blah at them, right? Because it's overwhelming. You have to let them know why it's important for them to pay attention. And the way you do that, and I know this isn't what you let me get to it, but is that you have to approach them and say, this job is allowing you to make the money that you're making and get home and have the home life and raise your family the way you want to. Correct? Yep. That's why it's important for you to pay attention to what's going on in trucking. Okay. On the politics side of it. Now, going back to what you said with OOIDA, when I first came out, I was like what I was saying. I didn't pay no attention. All I did was listen to groups like Black Smoke Matters and all that, and ELDs come out, and ELDs was going to mess up that's why I kind of left the Syndicate Sales and Hurry and Hoosier. Hurry and Hoosier is Syndicate Sales Trucking Company because we were switching over to e-logs, right? And then we were running on paper. So I kind of had this, I didn't like it because here again, they're taking away some of our freedom. We're grown adults when they need us, but when they don't need us, they need to control everything we do. So I started fighting. Well, I was mad at OOIDA. When I started digging in, I didn't really know. I was a member of OOIDA, been a member of OOIDA because I always wanted to be an independent contractor. My dad retired from Delco. When he did, he bought a semi, and we were owner operators, and we were hauling automotives. We hauled automotives from Anderson, Indiana down to Laredo for Carter Express. Okay. And that's what we were doing when 9/11 happened. After 9/11, a year after that, we sold the truck. We took it to Fort Wayne auction. I got about 24,000 out of it. And, I went back to driving a company truck. That being said, my dream was always own my own truck, do my own thing, work when I want to work, so forth like that. There was people that was against OOIDA. Though I learned a lot off of these advocates that mentored me when I first came in, at the same time, they didn't quite do their homework either. And I know that now. I didn't know that then. Didn't even think about it then, to be truthful. I'm just going to speed up a little bit. So I canceled my membership with them. I don't want that to do. I was OOIDA hater. OOIDA, you need to be doing more. You need to be blah, blah, blah. I didn't get it. I ended up doing America Without Drivers, and I did a nonprofit. Okay. And I dumped all that out. I stopped all that when Gord, McGill, and all them guys started talking about autonomous trucks. It was like mission accomplished. Now we're talking about, because when I first started doing it, people were laughing at me, saying I was stupid, which I get that all the time. I'm getting it right now with the driver's perspective, right? I'm kind of like ahead of and then this is just God. Yeah. God just finally told me, he says, no, you're ahead of it. Is what's happening is you're staying ahead, and that makes you enemy. And anyways, but I learned a little bit about nonprofit during that time. And I learned on and I started digging, and that's where I started starting to learn how to do research. Well, to circle back, for people to understand OOIDA, you have to look at what OOIDA is, what they represent, and how their organization is built. And when I started digging into, because one of my things that the Lord led me to is, don't just look at what's happening. Ask yourself why. Who's behind this and why, and where are they trying to go? So I was like, OOIDA, why isn't OOIDA doing this? If OOIDA is that, are they part of the swamp? And I've accused them of that back in the day. OOIDA, you ain't no better than ATA. You're part of the swamp too. You living in the swamp, you got the swamp on you. Well, there's some of that's truth to an extent. So long story short, I ended up digging into, I talked to one of the old presidents of OOIDA. I really dug in, and the more that I dug into OOIDA and learned, OOIDA is a board. There's 21 drivers that sit on a board, right? So you have 21 drivers that voice their opinion at OOIDA. Show me another organization that's like that right now. And these are
Mhm.
solid board members. I'm like, okay, are they all just knuckleheads? Well, no, some of them, you know how drivers are. Put 21 drivers in the same room and try to get them to agree on one thing, right?
Right.
Right. So, and then I talked to Louis. I stopped and I talked to Louis, and I asked bold, honest, truthful questions. And the more that I dug into it, the more you realize OOIDA is a nonprofit. There's only so much they can do and say, okay, because they are a nonprofit. All right. They're lobbying their membership, and they're lobbying. They lobby a couple hundred and something. I forget what it is. I wrote it in one of the books. I believe I've got it written down. Don't quote me on the numbers, but it's like a drop in a bucket compared to the ATA and all these other lobbying groups. Okay.
Mhm.
But they do have an office in DC, and I have had an awesome opportunity to be able to get to know Doug Morris, which is their government affairs and so forth like that, and on a personal basis there. And I'm just telling you, I have learned who they are and how they operate and what they can and can't do and why. And it's awesome. They are truly representing independence, not just owner operator. It's a voice for independence. Okay. And at the same time they're doing that, people don't understand, by doing that, it protects the driver. All right. Because every owner operator is setting, you know, you already have an association out there that does small fleets or whatever, NOT, whatever they are. But at the same time, an owner operator sets one truck, you know, his own authority, and set behind the seat, which is almost like things of the past. Right.
Right.
So these guys, I know Doug is constantly talking to people at that White House, at the Department of Secretary, the Department of Transportation. They've got a guy that does nothing but compliance. They have a team of lawyers. That's why I said everybody that keeps trying to knock OOIDA down, there isn't none of them that are prepared to fill those shoes. And when
Yeah.
you knock them down, I mean, you were talking earlier about something close to this. You knock them down, you're going to leave that void, and they're really going to walk over us. So when Shannon and Harvey and them at the ATU was fighting for non-domicile CDLs and exposing that stuff for non-English speaking, right? I know for a fact that at the same time they were doing that on social media and getting all this praise and glory and following, behind the scenes, OOIDA was working long hours in text messages and emails and pushing just as hard, moving that ball. Does that make sense? I
Yeah,
know
because
that.
there's multiple
And
layers to it, and
yes, yes. And that's why I said, just like OOIDA says, you don't need to tear them down. You need to build on top of it. You can have your own group. You can have your own association. Don't tear OOIDA down. They've got the place at the table, and they've got the foundation and the association, the team in place. You just can't replace them. You're not. It's took years for them to get where they're at right now, and to build that team. And if you just sit down with them and learn what they can do and what they can't do, and you feel like a grassroots. I mean, Shannon and them, they're not a nonprofit. They can go out and say and do and side with whoever they want. They just had that Corey, whatever, his cousin down there running for district, you know, representative and speaking and so forth. You know, OOIDA can't do that. OOIDA couldn't
right.
do that. So anyways, that's why I'm for OOIDA. I've talked to some of their staff. They're very good people. They've been there for years. Are they perfect? No. Are they going to do things to tick me off? Well, I hope so, because I never want to be totally content. You know what I mean? I've been in a big family for years.
What are you going to write about next week?
Yeah, you know, but yeah, no, OOIDA is solid, and I don't care what position you have. Don't just look at OOIDA at surface. Look deep into OOIDA of what they can and can't do and what they stand for, and you'll understand a lot more. And I think you'll understand that OOIDA represents, I say in my own words, independence and freedom in trucking. And I mean that. And I'm not saying that just because I'm saying that because I have dug in and peeled back layers and layers at OOIDA. Okay. And do they have part of the swamp on them? Listen, you're not going to get in the swamp. And I had to come to a God moment on this. Okay. Come to Jesus moment. They have to have part of the swamp on them to be able to be in the swamp.
Yeah.
Okay. There's certain things that they can't say or people that they can't rub wrong, or else they would never have that place at the table. They would push them out. Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Oh
that's
yeah,
what I
for
had.
sure. Like,
Me and you were talking about that, before the show. And it's one of those things where it's like you start peeling things back and it's like, hey, this is ugly. Yeah, but it's life.
yeah.
It's life. We have, yeah. So,
Yeah, it's
yep,
a complicated world.
it's
And yeah,
complicated.
and there's a lot of rules and stuff that go into how you get to play the game. And
Yep.
I'm sure, it took, like you said, OOIDA a long time to even just begin to navigate those, right? Like if any of
Oh,
us, decided today, like we're going to start, you know what, we're going to start an organization and we're going to do something because we don't think that's the right direction. Like the amount of things that they've had to build, and relationships that they've had to build with people and maintain, right? Not
yes,
just be a
yes,
fire starter and burn down every bridge in sight because it made for a good
yes.
headline or a good social media post. Yeah, and you just undercut your ability to accomplish anything, and now all you are is just somebody who can be a fire starter and can't actually accomplish anything. I mean,
That's
that's
exactly
just
right.
part of the reality of it. And
We're never gonna get ahead unless, like how divided our country is right now. I'm telling you, man, this it gets me. He did awesome. Charlie Kirk went to those and allowed those that hated him to talk to him, and he talked to them respectfully. He came to them. You get what I'm saying? And it's the
yeah,
same. It's the same thing. As much as I don't approve of and I don't care about the ATA and the mega carriers doing what they're doing. But if you read my article today, it was unfair how they done that. And when I say fair, I'm talking it was not the American way. Okay. It's like, oh, capitalism. No, look what you did. You allowed loopholes, and honesty doesn't care about your feelings. So I don't care what anybody listening to this feels like. I'm saying I'm being truthful and I'm over the target. Okay. I may not be right on it, but I'm over the target. By them allowing visa drivers to come in here instead of churning these drivers in and out of these mega carriers, they should have invested into those drivers. Those drivers went into those companies believing was sold the American dream, and it sucks. Oh. And you brought them in there, put them in a truck, and set them up for failure, knowing that you already have your cream of the crop in this company. You've got a fleet of 2,000 trucks. I'm just going to use these numbers. You got a fleet of 2,000 trucks. You've got 1,000 or 1,300 of these trucks that you have drivers that have good runs, dedicated runs. You treat them good. They're 3 million mile drivers. And then you just crap all over the guys underneath that because you've went and bought these trucks in a fleet and you've got deals with the manufacturers, and the Christmas comes in and the seasons come up and down, and that's why they want driverless trucks so much, is because all they got to do is flip a switch. They ain't got to hire and fire. So what it was it's greed. It's like, yes, you have a shortage of drivers because you've got 2,000 trucks and you've only got 1,500 drivers because you don't have the freight constantly year round for the other 500 trucks. But instead of sticking and focusing on your 1,500 that you do have, you want to go screw people over and drivers over and come out here and say you have a driver shortage and you're tearing people down like myself or like you had 30 trucks. Maybe I wanted to have a small fleet of truck, my son, where we could have went in and picked up that freight, but you want to come in and undercut people and do things and churn drivers in and out of there. People that came into your company with a dream, that went to
yeah.
school, put money out to come through your trucking school. So forth like that. No, it sucks. Anyways, don't get me fired up.
No, and it's sad.
But
Like
it's truth.
I'm on Facebook and I'm in Reddit and these trucker groups, and I mean, there's so many of the posts that are just exactly what you say, right? Like, I new truckers, people who had a genuine desire trying to better their life, just like you and I did, right? And
Yep.
and
Yep.
willing to make sacrifices and yes, are some of them naive and they don't understand what they're really getting themselves into, and do they get sold a bill of goods? Yes, that happens too. But, people with genuine desire in their hearts to improve their lot in life. Same reason I
Yep.
left a small town in Minnesota, because I didn't want to just sit in a warehouse and make minimum wage. I wanted to go do something, and I was willing to put in the work to get somewhere in life. And the stories are just heartbreaking.
Yep.
Continuous stream every single day of just watching them get washed out, treated poorly, left in the middle
Yep.
of the nowhere, starved
Yep.
out, all those things. And
Even these guys coming here on visas right now. I mean, they're being so misled, mistreated. It's ridiculous. And it's like, it's not their fault. Don't go after them. They were set up for failure. That one guy doing the U-turn he's got to stand accountable for that. He's a grown man. He's got common sense. Don't take me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying, right? But he was
Mhm.
set up for failure. The other thing that I'm hearing right now, a big pet peeve of mine is, oh, these guys live in trucks. Well, these drivers out here, they're just living in trucks. Okay, let's touch the brakes on this for a minute. Let's hit the brakes and let's think about this. Do you know how many people have come out of professional careers and went out to drive a truck, especially when in my younger years here, back 15 years ago? They
Mhm.
lived in a truck. They would sell their stuff, or sell their home stuff, put their stuff in storage, and hit the road. Okay, what is so wrong with that? You know how many people are, what do you call that right now, that where they're living in a camper, they're living in a van, and people are doing this all the time, as it's just an adventure to them. It's kind of a way that they save money, or they just want to travel.
Yep.
It's in our DNA, I believe. So to say, oh, they're just living in a truck, don't look down on that person. You know,
No.
it, he's out here working,
Yeah,
and
we did
why?
too in the 80s. We did in the 90s.
Look at the deadheads. What was that? Those guys that went to San Francisco. What was that movement in the '60s? It was, oh, anyway, that's what they did. They all traveled. Look how many gypsies and so
Yeah.
forth we had back in the day. It's in our DNA. I mean, so yeah, I don't like that being used out here either at all. It's like, no, that's no. If guys want to get their trucks and fix them up, and they don't have responsibility at home, and they're making a living, and they're just using a truck to travel and make a living, man, that's living the dream, dude. What?
Right. And I mean, talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Like, look at most of us, right? Like, that's exactly what we
Yeah,
did.
well, a lot of people work their whole lives to go do that in retirement.
Right. I mean, I'm sad that people don't get to do it in the way that we got to do it, like back in the 90s, where I could just leave, as soon as I left town and it was out of sight. Like, it was total
Oh yeah.
freedom. Nobody knew what the heck we were doing.
Yeah, where'd you end up? Where'd you say you went? You moved from home and went someplace else for a while and cooked, worked in a restaurant or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Where'd you
Yeah.
go
Old
to?
Country Buffet. Yeah.
Yeah, where was that at? What state?
Minnesota.
Okay. Okay. That's where you left though, was Minnesota, wasn't it? And you went someplace else?
Yeah, yeah, I've wandered around, right?
Yep.
When I
Yep.
started growing my fleet, I moved down to Rochelle, Illinois,
Okay.
and
Yep.
then I went bankrupt, and then I bought a camper, right? And
Rochelle,
moved.
Illinois. Do you know Quebecor? Have you heard of Quebecor when you were there?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I hauled for Haag, Haag, Parade and USA weekend newspaper inserts out of there for 2 years. I watched I watched the internet come in and watched the paper, them start slowing down and losing their business because the people were starting to get their newspaper on their phones, on the internet or
yeah,
laptop or whatever at
yeah,
that time. Yep, and that's when I ended up going to Syndicate Sales. Yep, I did that
yeah.
for a
And
good
so then I,
2 years.
went bankrupt, bought a crappy camper, trailed it down to the as far south as south would go on, US Highway 1, mile marker 0, Key West, Florida, and figured out what to do
That's
next in my
there.
life.
There
So.
you go. Yeah. See, and you loved it, right? You just, yeah, that little paycheck just didn't feel good. It was like the dream was great, but oh man, that was hurting my pocket. I got to do something
Yeah,
else here.
there's some choices you don't want to make with
Yeah.
that salary.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, I'm too old for ramen noodles. It make my blood pressure go up.
Yeah, like
But
quarter burritos, stuff like that. I got enough cholesterol problems. I can't go that route. So, all right, so you brought up autonomous vehicles here. Let's go down that path for a second. So I don't know if you saw this article, came out this week, and I saw it both on CNN and Fox News, which I thought was interesting. Rick Perry, former Texas governor and energy secretary, he wrote an article about how autonomous trucks are going to save America. Like that, the road to prosperity is paved with autonomous trucks, is I believe what the title of the article was. No, I don't know, no trucking experience that I know of for, Rick Perry, but he's an expert now. And so he wrote an article, and basically it was regurgitated talking points about driver shortage, blah blah blah. You can go pick up, any article that goes along with the driver shortage, and Rick Perry quoted all the statistics in there. But what are your thoughts on where we're at in this narrative now? You were a front runner of calling out the autonomous truck movement a while back, but how's it played out in alignment with what you thought you would see?
For the in between details, that's more like Gord, McGill, or James or something like that. But going up to a 30,000-foot view of what I really focus on, because I already know what I know, and it doesn't matter what other people say or think. That's what I've wrote in the books, so I know what I know, and it's just this was manufactured chaos. I wrote an article on that and used that head, and that was kind of in the fire truck deal. But this was manufactured chaos to accept this. You have to go back and look in 2016. Obama called in Bill Gates, the guy from Google, all them top techs, and this is on the record. They can look at it. I even mention it in the book. How do we transition from driver to driverless in the semis? Okay, they're using semis because it's federally regulated and they can push it. In the public sector, you can choose to take a Waymo. The public can choose to buy a car, but in trucking, they can push it on us. Okay. And then and it's just a lot bigger and a lot easier for autonomous to step in. And then on top of it, I just wrote an article. Well, I did the video. China is already piloting programs with driverless trucks on 83% of their highways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have no choice but to do this to stay up as leaders in the economic globally, right? In the advancement of technology. So what we're seeing right now, they couldn't project all this stuff to happen. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I keep going back to that just because you have to really follow along. They didn't know there was going to be accidents. They didn't know that ATU was going to come out right now. They didn't know any of this stuff. Okay. They could not project it. They didn't have a crystal ball, but this was part of the plan. And you can go back and read a driver shortage and follow it, and then read the machine behind the wheel. And like I tell people, anybody, if you don't believe what I'm saying, or you don't have the money for the books, you send me email me your address and I'll send these 2 books to you for free. And I'm not saying I'm right in all of it, but I'm saying I put enough pieces together for you to make up your own mind and go from there. Okay. Mm-hmm. But what you're seeing right now is, how do I want to say this? It's almost like oops, we didn't calculate this in. What's happening right now? They're coming to a crossroad. You aren't going to see them get rid of domiciled drivers. You're not going to see them get rid of visa drivers at a mass, and they could shut. I just said this in a video and proved it. They could shut this stuff down right now, but they're not going to, because the mega carriers, the ATA mega carriers, have flooded the industry with these. They allowed the loopholes with the 3PLs. They may not have put these non-English speaking and non-domicile, which they did too. That's a lie, and I can prove it just with and I just can't go into that because it hurt myself in doing what I could say. But these guys opened up the opportunity for these foreigners to get their own authority and haul their freight, so that the mega carriers weren't responsible when these guys messed up. That being said, they flooded the industry with this. If they were to stop this right now, there truly would be a driver shortage. Okay, it truly would upset the economics. And you think not global, not across the whole nation, but the southern United States is flooded with. I'm down here on 10. I bet you 10 trucks I go past, there's only going to be one white American driver, or Black American, or Mexican American, true American driver, versus 9 foreign, non-English speaking or very rough English speaking driver. Okay. So
Well, let me stop you
what,
for just a second there, because I
okay.
think it's something important to point out, because this is also a perspective thing. If you
Uh-huh.
go back to the 80s and 90s, you
Uh-huh.
did not see
No,
carriers who were also brokers,
no,
right? And
no.
then
Yeah.
really, even into the 2000s, like I worked at a mega carrier, and like our ability to, there was a desire, of course, to broker more freight,
Yeah.
but like it was just, it was not acceptable. Like
Uh-uh.
you were not going to, if you had a account like at General Mills or Best Buy or 3M or somebody like that, you were not going to be able to broker that freight out as a carrier. Like they expected you to haul your own freight. And
Yep.
as soon as you started to broker it, you would immediately lose lanes, right?
Yep.
And you would
It,
lose that freight, so this is a relatively new thing, that we have this entire free for all where every carrier has massive logistics footprints as a
yep.
3PL
And
in
when
trucking.
you look at that, Tony, not to disrupt you, but if you look at it, what you'll see is that you have Swift, Knight, the bigger carriers have bought into logistically, have come in and bought into a lot of the logistics, whether it's under their name or not. They have their hands in it. So at that point in time there, they can. There is no more that integrity of what you're basically talking about, right? Because that's why they wouldn't do that, Tony, was you wouldn't do that is because you cared about that load getting shipped from point A to point B and your customer,
Yeah.
right?
There was a
Once you get,
relationship there, right? It
yep,
was,
yep,
you know what? I'm believing that, and I'm going to hold you accountable because you
yep,
said it's your truck, your driver, you're best in class at A, B, and C, whatever it is, maintenance,
yep,
operations, driver recruiting, driver retention, blah, blah, blah. And, and so if you brokered that to some other trucker that you don't really know, what did I just actually pay for? Like I thought I had a
right,
relationship with you, and now you're telling me, Joe Blow from Timbuktu came and picked it up. I don't have a relationship with him.
right. But back to your autonomous though. So what's happening right now is the infrastructures, they're not really ready for this.
Mm-mm.
And people are becoming aware. And I remember back 2-3 years ago, I was on the phone with, I can't really state who, but upper people, and I said, I will do my best to get this on every freaking billboard I can. I'll go pass out flyers. You guys are misleading these drivers that's going out getting these loans for trucks or leases. I said, this, you're lying to them. You're setting these people up for failure. I said, we have a right to know what's coming. Autonomous is coming. I drove up on Two Simple's lot and went in there and got phone calls from the top. Okay. And got videos of it back then. Well, so here we are today. So they started coming out. Now everybody's starting to realize driverless is real. It's here. They're starting to pass them. They're starting to see them. They're starting to be on TikTok, everything else. So drivers are like, I'm out, tapping out, because yes, there's still going to be driver jobs. They're not lying to you. There's going to be, you're going to pull a double drop stretch. You'll haul cattle. You'll do this. You'll do that. But most of these drivers that are visa drivers and non-English speaking drivers and so forth like that, if you notice, are in general freight, van and refrigerated. General freight. Where is autonomous coming? General freight. Okay. So they started putting up a production plant, manufacturing plant somewhere down in Texas. I forget where it was. I'd have to go back and research it. And so they're already starting to set up the assembly, the plants to start pushing these out in mass numbers, but they're not ready. So that's where we're at right now, is we're at a crossroad, and they're and those guys up on the hill right now, Spears and Department of Transportation, investors and all them right now are at a, excuse my language, no shit moment.
Mm-hmm.
We got to move this. We got to get this moving. Okay, because now people are pushing back against their labor dumping. Okay, because that labor dumping was helping to fund the pilot program and the testing of these driverless trucks. Okay, they weren't necessarily profiting off of these. Everybody says, oh, they're profiting, but no, this money that they were saving right now, a portion of it, a big portion of it, wasn't going into the CEO's pockets. And you can see this. Let's look in 27. You go back and do what I did in that book, and you look at the graph of what the CEOs made over these last 5 years, and you're going to see what I said. Because that money that they're saving from these guys right now is going back into paying these autonomous companies, these autonomous builders, because they're not making money.
They're investing in the next generation of truck driver. That truck driver just happens to be a computer.
Yes, exactly. It's truth. They're not taking money out of their pocket investing. They flooded the market with cheap labor, and the monies that they were saving from cheap labor, they vested right back into the technology. Walmart did the same thing with the checkout counters, or with the self-checkout. I said it. In one of the places that I stopped in New Mexico, they only have a couple self-checkouts now, and they put people back in there because they were losing thousands of dollars. No disrespect to anybody, and I may not say this right, but that was because in that area, that region, those guys didn't have the majority were poor and didn't want to be doing all the self stuff, the technology stuff, and they would go to the line and stand in the line. So that Walmart was losing that money. So now the only self-checkout, you have to have a membership in theirs, in that store. It was crazy. I'm like, everything was conspiracy for a minute, and it was like, Will Cook, you're crazy, man. You're going over the edge. This is your own stinking thinking. Now all the pieces are coming together, and it's like, no, God was showing me. I prayed through for the truth, and he showed me, and this is exactly what's happening. It's not conspiracy. So that's what's happening in autonomous right now, and you're going to see it. You're going to see it within the next 3 to 5 on this. They're already telling you that. They're telling you. And here's what's going to happen. I said Shannon and Harvey, no disrespect to them. I love what they're doing. I'm glad they're doing it because hopefully it stops some accidents. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not beating them up or degrading them on there. I'm just speaking truth. They are helping and have helped build the case for the majority of the public that does not know what we know or watch how we watch things, that when they see all these accidents happen right now, when you pull a driverless truck out there and say, listen, this driverless truck isn't going to do what this guy in this truck is, because they could leave out the non-English speaking part. They can leave out some of this other parts. The trucking's gone crazy. In driverless trucks, we're going to be able to track them. They don't get tired. You ain't got to worry about them not speaking English. You get what I'm saying? The PR on them, and the public's going to say, bring it on. Bring it on. We'd much rather have that. And that's what I said in one of my articles. I said, shoot, yeah, you're going to be happy. By the time this infrastructure is ready, the public is going to be happy to see driverless semis out on the road, because we look so stupid out here doing stupid stuff because they flooded our industry with untrained. And it don't take the whole industry. All it takes is a third. I love that ball thing when they did, but take a glass of clear water and just take a couple drops of red dye and put in it and watch what happens to that water. And that's the same thing with what they're doing with the industry with foreign labor and untrained drivers. Just that little bit is just making news all over the place. And
the analogy like that I like to use is because I worked at Cargill for a while in the flour milling, and part of my training was to go learn how flour got milled, and so you're sitting in a classroom where they teach future flour millers how wheat works essentially, and how you get to flour. And then at one point in the class they ask, what is an acceptable level of mouse feces in flour? And I look around the classroom and I'm like, my opinion is none. How about that? And then they're like, well, that's not realistic because it's a big ass mill and there's a lot of mice running around. So while we all agree that like none is what we would like to say, like the cost of flour would be, hundreds of dollars a pound to achieve that. So that's not the right answer. And here is the acceptable level, like 16 parts per gram or whatever the math was. Who knows or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
Kind of like your, how many drops of water, of red dye does it take to corrupt this glass of water? Like not very many.
Not very many. Yep. So, and that's what's going on in the trucking industry. But yeah, you nailed it. And that's how I would say it too. I don't want to see any crashes out here. But yet we have them. And like I said, and I mean this, I mean, Chris Spears, the congressmen, congresswomen, all them, if any of them ever hear it, or if I ever got pulled to where I could say it, I would say, I know you didn't project this. I know Bush's and them, when they all set up everything, they weren't saying, oh, screw the truck driver. Oh, screw the public getting ran over, so forth like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they didn't think about it. Okay. They didn't think about it. And in all truth, they didn't really care to think about it. But we're putting the evidence in front of them. And here's the thing. I thought we advanced. I thought we advanced, and technology could be so good. I love my technology. I love my phone. I love what we're doing. I love all the features. It can either be used for good, or it can be used for evil. There is no reason why drivers can't be paid good, and why we couldn't have transitioned from driver to driverless and still maintain good pay, pensions, retirements, health benefits. And what stepped into that was the greed. Okay. And the buyouts in Congress. And how that happened was, you had, I don't care if they're these guys under the bus because it's truth. You had Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. These guys are asset managers, and they're paying them. So they're disconnected to guys like you and I. There's a disconnect there. Okay. And what I mean that there's no feelings for us. They don't associate with us. They don't go to Target. They don't go to Walmart. They don't go to Starbucks in our little world. I delivered one of the top Homeland Security guys. I moved him. When I went to move him, I was up across from the Pentagon. There was a complex that I went to, one of the complexes that I went to, you didn't even have to leave your apartment building, go down, go through a tunnel, and pop up in a mall. Full-blown freaking mall. and never went outside. Okay. There's a disconnect. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so when I went back to college, I ended up going over to Ireland to study for a while. And I took an economics course there, great professor. And one of the things that I learned, maybe one of the most important things I've learned in life, is a term in economics called an externality. And that's what you're describing here, right? It's the other things that happen as a result of the thing that was the intention. And the externalities, especially the ones that aren't tracked, they don't matter, right? And you see it, right? I mean, a good example of a tangible externality is the fact that we love fast food in America. We have fast food everywhere. But the reality is it produces a tremendous amount of waste, garbage. And there's no cost to McDonald's of what happens to, I mean, they do, right? To some degree, they've got dumpsters and they have to pay for it. But look at the model that they've created. The part of the model is that you take the trash and the food with you when you leave. And now it's your problem, right? Or it's the government's problem, because now there's extra garbage in each bin, and they keep collecting them, and it's piling up faster and faster. The externality is the fact that our landfills are filling up massively with garbage more and more every day. It's an externality to McDonald's because it's not their problem. Right.
It's
and
not
in
their
this
problem.
case, we are the Will Cooks and the Tony Elliots of the world, and all the rest of us are not the problem of the equations that these other people are thinking about. We're the externalities of it.
Yep. That's exactly right. I mean, go back to Charlie Kirk, what he said. It just really hit me hard when he sat there, because somebody asked him, I watched one of the videos, says, don't you worry about security or something happening? And he said, no. He says, the Lord told me to go, and then you look at Trump and these congressmen and so forth like that, and their security and so forth. And it's like, But if I just put a Trump hat on or put a Christian shirt on and I go into the wrong part at the wrong time of any of these major cities, it could get ugly.
Mm-hmm.
It could get ugly. I don't have no security. You want to take my guns away, and but yet so I can protect somebody if they come breaking into my house, protect my family, and that's not okay. But the same person wanting to take that right away from me has security at their home and a gate, a secure gate all the way around and so forth. And you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, no, we definitely have to make some changes. In the 60s, okay, I was born in 67. So I'm only going by what I heard from my grandparents and pictures. I seen pictures and heard their stories. Okay. So from the 60s up to, man, what, Tony, mid 90s, maybe into the 2000s, I almost want to say those were our best times in America. And especially in those 80s, 70s, and 80s, if you remember traveling, our medians were clean, our rest areas were clean. You'd go into a truck stop, there was a diner. We were living in, I think, some of our best times. And that was before technology. I mean, we had microwaves, we had flushable toilets. You know what I'm saying? Even
Mm-hmm.
everybody, even the poor, had pretty much, a decent way to go, right? You didn't see all this homelessness and stuff. Why was that? That's the question to ask. Let's not just focus on how it was. Let's look and say, why was it that way? And see, and that's what's changed me after I gave my life to the Lord and really started reading more than watching things, right? Or whatever, reading and listening and looking for truth. That's what we need to focus on. Why was that? There was plenty of work, really, truthfully. If you wanted a job, you could get it. If you were willing to work, you could get it. You could go to a fast food place and get a job. And at that job, I remember when I was at McDonald's, when I was like 16 or so, they said, you got time to lean, you got time to clean. You didn't see. Now you go into fast food, they've got French fries on the floor, trash. You know what I'm saying? It's very seldom do you get to walk into a clean fast food place. Look back there. Our rest areas, everything was just different. It was cleaner. If you were willing to work, you could get a job. And the jobs that you got, you may not be able to get that bass boat or that fancy car, but it seemed like you could survive if you were just willing to work.
Yeah.
And I mean, even migrants and people who were incarcerated was able to live. And now we're seeing so much drugs and homelessness, but yet we have more food, more technology, more of everything to make life better, but yet more people are falling through the cracks. Why?
Well,
Why?
here's one that blew my mind the other day. So I saw an article, I think it was on BBC, and it said we've reached peak farming to the point where globally we're the amount of land that's being used to farm is actually starting to shrink. And I scratch my head. I'm like, we got starving people all over the world, yet somehow we're shrinking the amount. And I mean, yes, some of this is related to production, like our production per acre.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part that just blows your mind is just yeah, but like when you go and look at like the percentage of people in the world who are undernourished, or more specifically and painfully, the number of children in the world who are undernourished, and then you're going like we're cutting back on farming as a world, like how is that reconcilable? It just blew my mind to go, what the heck are we really doing when when the 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 visceral effect of just knowing that we have all these problems in the world, yet there's some mechanism that's actually decreasing the amount of farming in the world while people are starving.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They were talking, I seen an article, I wish I could have caught on to it, about their testing or looking into building places out in the desert area. Was it Nevada or California? Someplace out in there, so that the homeless, where these tent cities and stuff are,
Mm-hmm.
to where they can take them out there And I think it's a great idea, to be truthful. I mean, I don't care. You know, people say, oh, he can work, he can do this and do that. Okay. By the love of Christ in me, and at one time I thought that way too, but now I look at it like this. If a person is physically able to work, there's no reason why they couldn't work. But in today's society, if you don't have transportation, you don't have a cell phone, you don't have an address, you don't have these things, you're not going to work. And a lot of these people on welfare right now are treated or have a better way of life if they're living in a HUD home, get food stamps, free medical. They are better off than what they are to go get a job at McDonald's or inventory at Walmart or one of these lower paying jobs, because they lose those things.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
such a
on
thin
top of
line.
it, and then this top of these guys in the camps, if they're there, I don't care what their health, what you're saying they could do or can't do, there's something wrong. They're broken somewhere to not have any desire to do any more than that. Okay. And then let's go back to the Bible, to into God's word, which we created. That's the foundation of America. What made it the greatest nation on earth was because of the principles in that Bible, the Constitution, everything comes from that. People, when they would do fields or so forth, what was left over, they weren't supposed to go back and grab it all up. They were supposed to leave it there for people traveling or those in less whatever. And the same thing for bankruptcy. If somebody worked for you for so long, that's where our bankruptcy come from. Do you see what I'm saying? So we have, the further we fade away from God's word, the more jacked up it's getting, and it's evident. I don't care if you believe in God or if you don't believe in God, read God's word. There's proof that that Bible's been here, been written so many years ago. And there's so many things in that Bible that's written that there's proof that it happened. And if you read it, so if you want to get this place back, if you want to get us back on track in the right direction, you're going to have to go back to those same principles. You have to, or it ain't going to change. But I've read the back of the book, and we may have a few more good times. I know how it's all going to end, brother. So it is what it is. So, but that's the answer to it. There's nothing new underneath the sun. I don't get it. I don't get where people, and I do get it, I guess, because we're not reading God's word like we used to. We don't have God in the courtrooms. We don't have God. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. It says it. That's what made us the greatest nation on earth.
It's just up to us to whether we're going to live it or not.
Yeah. And it takes guys like us, what we're talking and doing. And it's like right now, even Republicans or whatever are wanting to push back and fight. And it's like, it's just going to make matters even worse. It'll weaken us within, and our adversaries sitting on the outsides just, I hope they do. Because while they're fighting each other, we can come in and take their stuff. We can take control of it, so. But autonomous, you were talking about autonomous trucks.
We wandered a little bit.
Yeah, if we're going to continue down this road, and I hate to say it because I love trucking, and I think trucking is a great opportunity for just regular high school educated, maybe college kids that went to college and didn't come out and get what they, what I'm saying, so forth like that. I think it's an awesome opportunity. I think it's an awesome opportunity for people that may have got incarcerated, did something wrong, grew up, realized I screwed up. I really do want to do something productive, but I don't have a college education. I don't have a skill set. Maybe they don't have a home. Maybe they don't have a lot of money and they want to hit the road, or maybe they just want to travel. Trucking was a beautiful thing, man. It truly was.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I've done it for 34 going on 35 years. My dream, even trucking when my kids was there, hauling automotives up to Janesville, Wisconsin, down in, back and forth, doing the same thing, home all the time, one night during the week, home on the weekends. And then one job hauling Bose speakers. I was home every night, off every weekend. There was so much opportunity if you had a CDL or a chauffeur's license back in the day. You weren't going to go without a job if you just protected that driver's license. You had a job and you could live. And I did it. My kids' mom didn't work, still doesn't work. I still take care of her, but she's raising one of her grandkids, and my youngest is still at home. And then I've got 3 that's graduated from college and 3 that are out on their own now. But anyway,
Well, that's what,
yeah,
when you think about it, right? And, the premise of this group of episodes on my podcast is around the driver shortage series, right? And we have a lot of
okay,
discussions. It's been something that's been talked about for many years, right? It's always been one of these ever-present topics for a variety of reasons, some of which is manufactured chaos and what it enables. But, when you look at, when you sit back, like you and I are discussing it from a little bit of a distance, you've got, of course, the economic pressures that never go away, right? How do we get the cost down? How do we save money? How do we still maintain a margin while everybody else is getting squeezed from their various pressures? And part of that always comes back to the driver. How do we get a cheaper driver? How do we move the freight for less money? And so you've got that fire burning on one side of us, right? That's always been there. How do especially since the 80s when deregulation came and it really, opened up to competitive forces even more so. And it's just like we've talked about, continued to evolve into kind of just a bigger fire on more fronts, kind of chasing us all into this job that this occupation of being a truck driver that's less and less valued from a monetary standpoint. And then on the flip side, now we've got autonomous vehicles pressuring, right? And knowing that it's kind of like, is this checkmate for the American truck driver? And to your point, like, no, not every truck driving job is going to be very easily automated or, have a machine take over. But to your point, like the part of it that was kind of for a lot of us like it wasn't the battling with delivering in the Bronx or at Hunts Point or the water market in Chicago or wherever. Like that wasn't we didn't do the job for that part. We did it for the miles in between, you know the the
yep.
the small cheese factory in Minnesota and Hunts Point and the part of that part of the journey. But that's the part that's going to go first, right? Out of all this stuff. And we see it, right? Where are they testing autonomous trucks out in West Texas in the middle of nowhere? And where are they going to move next? Where there's just a little bit more people and it'll keep creeping in and taking away. And it's just like, to your point, like there's a part of it that's just I don't know,
There
is
was a meme that I seen today, and it was a lady, and she said, and the meme was AI. I didn't want AI to write my story or my meme so that I can go wash my dishes and do my laundry. I wanted AI to do my laundry and wash my dishes so I
yes.
could write my story and create my meme.
Yeah, there's like a
It's
perverse
ass
inversion of
backwards, ain't
this.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, she nailed it. That's exactly right. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And that's what the autonomous, oh, nobody wants to do it. And I called it out and I kept saying it's a lie, and it switched. Even Steve Pacelli, big known and then whatever, and he went and done it. And it made them hate me even more because I went against the guy that exposed whatever. And I'm like, no, it's a lie, Steve. And in that last video I was in it too. What it got like over, I forget how many millions of views on that YouTube. But he finally started saying it. No, that line haul driver, there's people in line to get a line haul job at Old Dominion, UPS, FedEx, them jobs. That's what they want is line haul. You don't see them lining up to get a local job where they're doing 20, 30 pickups and drops a day.
Or
Rather than
200.
that, yeah, you get what I'm saying? It's like, no. So that was a bold-faced lie too. And that's what brings out the madness and the anger in me, is because they're lying to the public. And they're lying, and they're not lying to the driver, they're lying to the public, because any driver
Hmm.
that's paying attention at all knows better, right? But they were snookering it in the line haul. I had a video with Edward out in the Bay Area out there where we talked to a UPS driver. This has been back a few years ago. And he says, I ain't worried about the union to take care of me. I said, no, that's what you're wrong. The union wants you gone too. They want your job. The union is not going to take care of you. You're a union rep, the closest one to you. Yes. But the top union guys, they know they're still going to be drivers. They know they still have a job, and this is the way everything's going.
Yeah, not
You're
to
being
mention they at the country club they figured out which companies do I need to invest in
Mhm.
to hedge my bets
Yep,
on the inevitable.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
A lot of truth to that. Yep, follow the money.
Well, to the point of your meme, like, hey, can you use your fancy AI widgets to, when you give me an appointment at 8 a.m. to deliver my load of cheese, can I like not be still sitting here at 4 p.m.? Like maybe your AI could help with that.
Right, right. Tony, I'm coming out of Arizona, Phoenix, where I seen Waymo all day,
Yeah, that's
running
where I
through
am.
as I was there. And I come out of Phoenix and I'm on my way to Georgia. You don't think that if I could still make 80 to $100,000 a year and jump in this truck once I got this thing out on the interstate, push a couple buttons, and my seat go back like they show in some of those commercial videos or whatever, and me just sit here and ride for the next few days while this thing drives itself across here. Man, if I had faith in the equipment and was still getting paid the same, go ahead. I'd still go out and put chicken lights on my truck and do everything up, but I'd be able to sit back on face. Well, and in China they did. I seen a video on it where they've already extended their service, their hours of service of driving, because it is set up for some parts of driverless trucks. So
Hmm.
now they have extended hours. And I'm like, that driver, if he still has to sit behind the wheel of that truck, he is about as worthy as as whatever he is not worthy, because he's still going to be tired. Now, if he can go back there and go to bed, but they didn't show him going back there and going to bed. They showed him just sitting behind the wheel, not driving. I'm like, that's still a safety issue. What's his reaction time going to be if he's been up for 14, 15 hours just sitting in that seat, even though he didn't have his hands on the wheels? No. Now if you can lay down, you can take a nap, you can be on your phone, you can mess around. I'm not against the advancement of the technology. I love it. I'm telling you, I'm good. I mean, I got a picture of me back in '89 in an '89 cab over Pete with flip flops on and my foot up on the dash. Okay, so and them guys are all talking their smack, and I'm like, I'm still out here 4 million miles later with the Master Driving Award. Talk all the smack you want to, well, we'll compare records here. So, like I said, I'm not against the technology, and it should be making life better, not taking life out of us, sucking life. And I used to like that Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy,
Yeah.
but it's like he's starting to say canned messages. Who's in his pocket? Who's lobbying him to get out here and say stuff? How am I at 58 years old, if these guys start suppressing this line haul stuff and it pushes me out of what I want to do? I'm not going to go become a plumber right now at 58 years old. It ain't
Yeah.
going to happen. You get what I'm saying? What are you going to do to this guy at he's been in trucking 15 years. He's already got a bass boat, a camper, a middle class home, kids in sports, and so forth like that. Are you going to take him out of that truck, do what Yang said, and give him earn $1,500 extra a month while he goes to school? No, you're going to bankrupt that dude.
Yeah.
They're not thinking. It goes back to what we said earlier. They're not thinking this through. The
Well, that's what I
transition.
think, the driver shortage, the discussion about it is transforming before our eyes
Hmm.
because it, you know, it changed it's changed its manifestation in the trucking industry, right? When you
Yep.
look at earlier generations in the 80s and 90s, it was about, hey, how do we get the government to help pay people to go to CDL school so that we can utilize them as drivers? And and then it switched over to the driver shortage, created some of these other things, or manifested its way into B1 visas and cabotage and then it's changed over to the H-1B visas and
But
non-domiciled
Tony,
drivers, right? But it
can
was,
can we back up though, Tony? Can we
yeah.
go back to the real driver shortage again? Let's lay this out, and you can probably articulate it a lot better than I can as you move forward from here. But here's the truth, and I said it a little bit ago, and we're just going to break it down. I'll try to stay on track and not go down the rabbit trails. There truly was a driver shortage in the perspective of the person saying there was a driver shortage. Kroger's has 2,000 loads that are available. England Trucking says, okay, Kroger's has 2,000 loads. We have 1,000 trucks, where we have 2,000 trucks, and they've got 2,000 loads. We're going to go to Freightliner. We're going to buy our trucks, and we're going to get a discount on them because we're going to order 2,000 trucks. Or we're going to do 2,500 because we have a dealership now, because this is what's evolved too. A lot of these mega carriers have dealerships, and they sell them trucks and they lease them trucks, right? So they're making money in all these different areas. But because they have these 2,000 trucks sitting there, and Kroger's has 2,000 loads, they can only get 1,000 drivers. So they've got 1,000 trucks sitting there empty. To them, they have a driver shortage.
Yeah.
They're not lying. They're truthful. They're being truthful. They have a driver shortage. But what's not being said, which is also truth, because I ran the spot market in the load board for over 7 years, so I know what I know, is the spot market, the load board tells the real truth, the real story. Is there a shortage or isn't there a shortage? When there's a real shortage, rates go up.
Exactly.
Supply and demand. It hasn't happened. So what it is the mega carriers have a shortage, and not the industry. And that has to be preached and explained to the public, because that way they can say, no, they're not lying. They do have a driver shortage because they've overbought. They're greedy. That's what it is. It's greed. They got trucks that are sitting empty because they bought too many trucks. Because when Christmas comes around, those couple months of Christmas time, there's more freight than there is trucks, and they want to capitalize on that. Or they went out and bought all these trucks and got these drivers, and now all of a sudden this account isn't there no more. Their buddy US Express or somebody undercut them, and they're hauling it, and now they're sitting with all these empty trucks. They have a driver shortage. But if you look at that load board, which tells the real story, there is no shortage, because that freight's still getting moved, but it's being moved by independent operators or different companies. But that pisses these guys off because they're greedy, and they've went out and bought these trucks, and they've got this dealership, and these trucks need to be moved. Okay. Or they hired all these drivers to put in these trucks for the Christmas rush or hurricane season. And then when it dies down, all of a sudden they don't have the freight anymore. So they starve these drivers out and they rotate them through.
Yeah. Yeah. They use,
so they have
like, there's an
mill.
economic benefit to having a portion of your fleet churn out at a very high percentage. Because to your point, like, even if you go to any one of these fleets and you say, okay, we have 100% churn or 90% churn or 50% churn, pick whatever number you want. The reality is that's actually like a small subset. A small subset of your fleet has even higher churn. And then you have, because, you know, you've got drivers who've been with your fleet for 20 years.
Yep. Now let me help you with something else too. That'll be a great talking point for you. Truck on demand. Remember that, truck on demand, and it fits right into what we're saying. And this is why the mega carriers and the ATA are so hot and already involved, because they had the money to invest into these autonomous trucks to get it started, right? Because they had the money. Just like I said, they've got 2,000 trucks, but only 1,000 drivers. Those 1,000 trucks now at autonomous, at any point in time, if they don't have to worry about drivers, all they have to do is flip a switch. Christmas rolls around, they start up those trucks, they haul the freight. Something happens, they turn it off, the truck's set. That's truck on demand. Where Shannon and smaller fleets think, oh, we'll just get into this game. You may at the beginning, just like Walmart, when they came in, Walmart was a plus for everybody. And after they ran everybody out, all of a sudden now the price is up, and things are, most of their stuff come from China. Okay. So what's going to happen? Mark my words, you're going to be around when this happens. And you'll remember this. At first, they're going to say, yeah, you have 400 trucks. Oh, yeah, this autonomous will work. You'll be able to do this or that. All these mega carriers are already invested, already hauling freight with autonomous trucks. They're already in bed. They're ahead of the game. They have trucks set across this nation, and you have to look at how many mega carriers I'm talking about: England, US Express, Warner, Prime, Snyder, all them guys, Swift, Knight. How many trucks right now, to this day, right now, are sitting in America without a driver in it, sitting at many terminals across this country? All of a sudden, autonomous is set loose. Okay. And all you have to do is go in, program it in, and put a couple features on that truck. They have the shops, they have the money, they have the ability. Do you effing think that someone with 200 trucks or 400 trucks are going to be able to compete with the top 10 mega carriers of the ATA with all the thousands of trucks they have combined together? You better go. No, you're
Yeah,
naive.
and especially
You're
in a technology arms race.
exactly. And it's just a flip of a switch. They have the money, they have the equipment already. They're ready to go, and are working with the autonomous builders, literally sharing their terminal, hauling their freight. It's proven out there. Torque Robotics, Aurora, all them, Kodiak, all them are
Kodiak, yeah.
already partnered with mega carriers. So when it happens, they're going to come out and they're going to play the PR stuff. They have time because they have money, and they're used to putting a plan together for a decade or 3 years or 5 years of business plans, right? They're going to let you think that that's what it's going to be. Just like Walmart, when Walmart come out, it was going to be a blessing for the working man, and it was, until they ran Ma and Pa out of business, and the dollar stores and so forth. Now all of a sudden you have no choice. And now you're not saving no money either. You're back up to where it was in the first place, and you're getting your crap from China.
Well, here's a
So
different kind of parallel to that. My wife and I were just talking about it, which is the whole, and you're not a big TV watcher, but the whole cord cutting phenomenon, right? It was amazing. We all hated the cable companies, Cox and Charter. They were just stealing our money. We didn't have any choice. We wanted the
yep,
entertainment, and they had the monopoly, and they had the platform, they had the wires, the cables
I
running into our
remember that.
houses,
Yep.
right? And then it became awesome, right? Like cut them off, go buy a subscription to Netflix, and screw the cable companies. And now my wife and I are like, well, this thing is on this thing, this platform, and I got to pay 14.99 a month for that, and then I got to go pay 7.99 to these people and 21.99 to Disney, and that'll get me ESPN as well because I like to watch some sports. And I'm like, can we just get the cable company back? Like, like I don't need to be managing Tony's cable company over here and making deals with all the providers.
So what I think is going to happen within, I don't know, I say within 5 years you're going to see it. You're going to start seeing it now because you're already looking into it deeply, going down the rabbit trails, like conversations like this. But you're going to see over the road trucking is going to be controlled by 5, 10 carriers. That's it. Just like the rail, just like ship, just like air. And that's what's getting ready to happen to trucking. And that's their goal. And then
Well,
that's
that's where I was
easier on
kind
the
of going
government.
with.
Yep,
Go
it's
ahead.
easier on the government. It's easier on the government. It's easier to be controlled. You can use control as a bad four-letter word, or you can use it as national security and tax. There's good to it, but there's always bad players involved, right? So, but that's where we're going.
Yeah, I mean that's where I
Truth.
was kind of heading with where I was talking about how just the narrative of driver shortages changed over time, right? But to me, this is like a fundamental, like this is a big shift, right? Whereas those
Yeah.
other ones
Yep.
were incremental shifts, and it was still like this human to human shift, right? Whether that was a B1 or, yeah, like a B1 visa or a H1B visa or, some other crop of immigrants, because we've got, that there's also the non-domiciled, legitimate immigrants, refugees, all kinds of stuff. But it was human to
Hmm.
human, right? So it was a
Right.
different kind of discussion. This one is totally different insofar as the competition is like something totally foreign to what we've been dealing with throughout the history of trucking. And I have I'm sure you fall into this same boat, which is like you think of 1,000 things, and then like a couple of them actually you work on because they light enough of a fire to do something with it.
Right.
And And for me, it was the podcast, and my wife's seen like, at least a million of these ideas come and go over the years. And the podcast lit a fire under me. And she's like, why? Why do you suppose that is? And I'm like, honestly, when I sat down and thought about what the right answer to that was, I was like, I don't know if we're gonna like my audience of long haul truck drivers and people who have the time to listen to long form storytelling behind the wheel about trucking. I don't know if I wait 5 years, there might not be an audience left for those for that discussion anymore. And then
That's
after
right.
that, it would just be memory lane.
Yep. 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 I remember when XM radio first come out, and I would listen on Sundays. I would take off up there to Rochelle to Quebecourt. I'd have to pick up on Sunday to have somewhere on delivery on Monday and start dropping inserts at the newspaper places.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, Whispering Bill Anderson, he would come out. He would be on Sundays, and what he would do is he would bring up some of the old country stuff. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but I learned it through his show that Willie Nelson wrote what's her name's Blue, or not Blue. He wrote Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain too. But what was Patsy Cline's famous song? I'll cry. Oh, I can't even remember now. I haven't listened to regular secular music in a while. I listen mostly Christian music. But anyways, he wrote that song. And so what you're doing right now though could very well be something that you do playbacks on 10, 15 years from now. That would be really cool. You get what I'm saying? Because God
Yeah.
works like that. God's timing and our timing is totally different.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was like, man, we're so close to the end times, blah, blah, blah. And there was just something that just happened today. And I heard, and it was like 1,000 years. It took 1,000 years. And then I'm reading in Judges, just getting ready to go into the book of Jude. But yeah, we could end up in this same time right now, another 100 years. A meteor could happen, nuclear war. But there again, 500 years from now, none of that could happen. We could still be here right now. You don't know. The Lord says you'll know the seasons. Yeah, I believe we're in the season of birth pains because it matches with God's word. Okay. And I take his word literally, and I'm not letting a lot of other people get into my brain with their own doctrine or their own commentary per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so we are, to me, I believe my own stinking thinking is we are at the beginning or in the time of birth pains. And if you look that up and if you do it with an open mind and pray about it and try to keep your own thinking out of it and just listen to God's word and dig into God's word and take it to its original context of the Greek and the Aramaic language, the Greek, so forth, you're going to see what I'm saying. It's like, okay, but how long is that birth pain? Well, he don't tell us. He says we'll know the seasons and the signs. And it's exactly what I'm going back to without going down that rabbit trail is, so what you're recording right now may not be, and the same thing with me with the driver's perspective, right? I don't know what my driver perspective is, but I have felt the Holy Spirit tell me it was to help change the narrative. That was my calling. Okay. With America Without Driving, my calling on that was because God uses people, all bodies of Christ, in their profession. We're not all called to preach and teach and do all this stuff, but we're still all Christians. We also have a purpose within our calling. A driver's perspective did exactly what it was supposed to do. It got people like Gord, James, and all type of people talking about autonomous trucks. The industry is filled with people talking about autonomous trucks now, right?
Yeah.
The same thing with the driver's perspective. A driver's perspective was to say, stop. These people need to be looking at Congress, congressmen, the gatekeepers, the people. Technology's not bad. Quit saying the technology's bad. Let's look at the labor. Look at the people. What are we going to do with the driver behind the wheel? That's what this is about. Start identifying people that their motive is to build a platform, not speak the truth. We have a lot of people out here putting themselves in a position of a journalist without doing true journalist work. Okay. And it's like, you're saying you're a truth seeker, you're saying this or that, but you're moving to every trend that's coming through. And I'm not out to name names or anything like that, but that's what aggravates me and angers me. It's like, if you were really doing what you say you're doing, I wouldn't have to be telling you this. You would see it. Do the homework. Okay. Now, if you're just a podcaster and creating content and being a commentator, say it. Don't challenge me though. Don't throw me under the bus and tell me to go sit in the corner with a dunce hat on, because what I'm out here doing is I'm doing journalist work. I'm trying to find the truth. I'm trying to expose the truth. And I get a lot of hits for it. Get bloody nose, black eyes, I hate Will Cook bumper stickers. You know what I mean? So don't attack me like that. You don't have to agree with me, but just don't attack me on those kind of things, because I'm telling you, when I come out and tell you, it's like, this is my opinion, it's my perspective. And if I have the proof, and that's why I wrote the books, that's why I did what I did, is because my voice got muffled out with the noise of trending stuff on social media. And it's like, start speaking the truth so that we can, if you truly want to change this, or unless you're just riding the wave. If you're just riding the wave, it is what it is. But I'm going to call you out. I'm going to say, you're just riding the wave. I'm not trying to ride the wave. I'm trying to make a way for these people coming up behind us, that their mothers and fathers and their livelihoods weren't perfect for them to come out and be something. They need opportunity. And autonomous and robotics and everything is not just coming into trucking. It's in shipping, it's in warehousing. You already know, you've heard it plenty of times.
It's in technology. It's literally destroying jobs in the technology is destroying technology jobs.
I don't like the universal income, but Yang come out and said it. He called it out when he was running for president. And if we're going to keep going, just like I said with the driverless, if they're going to keep flooding the industry with untrained drivers, so I want driverless out here too, because my family's out here on these roads, and my grandkids and my great grandkids will be. So I would prefer to have autonomous too. And I would flip Spears and the mega carriers a bird as I was leaving. Okay, I'm just telling you. But and it's the same thing with the warehousing and all that stuff. People are going to need work. And if we're not going to have work, as much as I'm against a socialism and so forth like that, then by God, bring universal income. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. If we don't have a choice, because China's going to do it, and we'll have to kneel to China if we don't advance in this technology, then bring the universal income. I understand when you come to a wall, you don't have a choice. Okay. That doesn't mean that we can't have freedom of speech. We can still have our freedom of speech. You know, the only thing is, you may not like fish, you might like golf. So you want to spend $5,000 a year or $10,000 a year in golfing. I don't like golfing. I want to go fishing. I want to have a bass boat. You know, how are we going to get these things? And I don't have time to wrap my mind around that and try to figure that out right now, because right now, all I see is tent cities growing. I see more people falling into drugs and homelessness, okay, and giving up. So I don't have time to try to right now think about what universal income would look like, but I do know there's a couple countries right now that does it, and they have beautiful countries, and it's working. Okay, yeah. So it's like, let's get past this, and maybe that's the next thing where everybody will start calling me crazy. Maybe you just got breaking news right there. Maybe that's the next thing God's calling me to, and they're going to hate me for that, because I'm going to start saying universal income. And how are we going to do it?
That's how I feel about it too, Will, honestly. Like, I mean, I think that's the horizon that maybe we can see, but the other folks cannot, right? And I mean, in a way, it's a blessing, right, that somebody can see it and talk about it, because, you know, like you mentioned, like what we can't do is go rope-a-dope people into, you know, going and buying a truck, or, you know, going down these career paths we're just going to destroy their lives in 5, 10, 15 years. Like, that's not right. And we can't just call that, oh, that's just capitalism. Like, no, like we got to believe in something bigger than that.
Yeah. That's what causes suicides, drug abuse, and all these other things. You're killing people by doing that. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just like, stop, give them hope, give them some kind of security. You know, that's what I think those 20, 30 years of good times that we had. That's why I say those were probably the best years, because there was plenty of work. Delco automotive industry was booming. Record businesses were booming. You know, those years were good. They were good. You know, look at the homelessness. Did we have some? Yeah, but usually those guys were alcoholics or something And even when they went, because I worked at some of the missions and stuff like that, if you went to the mission, they helped you get a job and get on your feet.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's a different kind of broken
Yeah,
in some
very
respects
well said.
today.
Very,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's a meme right there. That's a heading right there. It's a different kind of brokenness. It is. It is. And I think it's because we've brought a lot of God out of things. And I think that's the difference. I really do. I think people just like that, and it sucks. It hurts. It really does hurt me. Like right now inside my throat and so forth, when I get ready to say this, the woman on that train, that poor girl, and I've got three daughters, I got three sisters, three daughters.
Mm.
She sat on there. She stayed in her own little world. You could tell that she was slumped over. So she was trying to stay not seen, just out of it, right? Just, I'm not here
Yeah.
type of deal. And it was bad enough that that guy stabbed her. She sat there. I've watched this. This is my passion. And it just sucks. I
Yeah.
swear I could cuss really bad. And they all got up and moved instead of helping that girl.
Yeah. The
and
loneliness in those
acted like
seconds.
she did, and acted like it didn't even happen. I'm like, you just cold hearted, living in fear. No, it's horrible. It's horrible. And just to think that girl was on that train by herself in the first place,
Yeah.
having to do that. I mean, look at what we're doing. No, that's at the beginning of your story, and you asked why. There you go. That's why. That's why I do what I do. That's why I brought a driver's perspective, because if not, my voice is drowned it out. And it's like, here you go. And it's like, I've got like 500 people, a little over 500 and whatever people on X, and and then Gord and Super Trucker, whatever, they kind of come at me sideways, and they blocked me, and I lost a couple and right back up. And I'm like, it's a God thing. And the Holy Spirit straight said, okay, Craig Fuller liked on my post today. OOIDA watches my post, watch everything that you get what I'm saying. So it's
Yeah.
not quantity, it's quality. And it's like, thank you, Lord. So it is he's like, oh yeah. Yeah. It's not about making a living off of X or anything. And that's basically going to what you're saying right now. It's not about today. Do what the Lord is guiding you to do. If you have passion for it and you have a gift for it, then do it. And this, believe me, this writing and stuff and chat coming out at the time that it did, and me putting all my feelings and emotions and my thoughts together, that's a gift. That's a God thing. You get what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
it's not me. I went to speech school. I'm a knucklehead, brother. It's glory be to God. It's not glory be to Will. And there's no way I could keep standing up as many times as I got smacked for doing what I'm doing. I mean, I've had threats from bike gangs and so forth like that. And over these last few years, I've really went through a lot of crap, and still standing here. It's glory to God, not glory to me. So yeah,
All right.
I
So
hate Will Cook. Bumper stickers.
Well, let's wrap this session
Yep.
on a lighthearted question. And I hope it is a
Okay.
session one of many, because the
Okay.
last few hours I've really enjoyed with you, man.
I don't
Um,
I don't do them. A lot of guys have tried to get me on there. I went on Gord's a couple times, and I'm like, nah, I just really don't. Go ahead.
all right, favorite trucking memory. Could be funny, could be bad, could be biggest goof up. No, I will make no judgments against you. If you tell me your favorite pastime was saying Baba Booey on the CB radio 1,000 times, I'll let that fly too. But what do you got?
Man, I don't know. Trucking, when I got two little girls 13 months apart, and my kids' mom had two children when I met her, and I had one from a previous, and we moved to Fort Wayne because I was hauling I was hauling transfer cases out of Syracuse, or out of Fort Wayne, trucking bus over to Venture Gear in Syracuse, New York, up off the turnpike. And I would run that. I'd leave one night and be home the next, and I'd do that two turns a week and be home. And man, that was probably one of the best times in my trucking career. I remember I had bought a truck, was buying a truck off of Mark Ring, And I've been in a couple contracts that was nothing in writing. It was just handshakes. And that tells a lot in itself. But I remember Sarah was pregnant for Caitlin, for my first girl, for my first daughter, for our first child, actually. Yeah. Because on the side of the truck, it was the old Ford semi. It had Michael Ashley Austin, which was her two, and my one from previouses. And it had a question mark because we didn't know what Caitlin was going to be at the time. And that was my first truck. But during that time of trucking was probably my favorite time in trucking, making a living, supporting my family, and getting home and trucking them up. I mean, we were on paper logs. We drove. You did what you needed to do to get the job done. We were respected, and music was good. Life was good, brother.
More
Life
than
was
just fast food to choose from at the travel center, excuse me.
Oh, we still had diners. Yeah, you still were able. And when you would go down to the Carolinas, I'll never forget it. You go down to the Carolinas and Kentucky, so forth like that. They always had greens and, really good food down there. And then if you ventured out west, the food cultures were different around the United States. One of my favorite truck stops is in Bangor, Maine. Up there, Diehards. They still make their own bread, their own pies, their noodles, homemade cooking, so forth like that. Great place. I still highly recommend that one. I haven't been out there forever, but I'd like to go back out there. You pull up the fuel pump, and I believe they still pump the fuel for you too.
What was the name of that place? I got to get it for Big Cal. He goes up to Maine. He listens to the podcast.
Diehards. DYHARTS.
All right. You heard it here, Big Cal. You're gonna have to give us a review. Get up there.
Yeah, it's cool. One of the very few still left.
Well, all right, brother, man. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for all the time. And I can't wait to hook up with you again.
Talk at you later. Thanks for having me.
This has been the Channel 19 Experience. If it's about trucking, we're talking about it. All uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories. But we talk about the world of trucking today, too. Everything from legislation to lane changes in the industry. We got it covered. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back at the ranch soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on social media at Channel 19 Experience and the website at www.channel19experience.com. That's channel and the numbers 19. See you down the road.